How's it going, my comic chat army? We're here with Tony Doug Wright, the creator of Danger Devil, Day 185, and the Chronicles of Death Doctor. How you doing, Tony?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Oh yeah, it's my pleasure. So tell us the creative process of let's go with Death Doctor, the Chronicles of Death Doctor. What's the creative process of getting this book out?
So, Chronicles of Dr. Death is a graphic novel, and it was something that was sent to me when I was working on webcomics. Before I joined SourcePoint Press, I was creating webcomics at a site called Champion City Comics. I got a group of writers and artists together, and we just started making all of our own original comics. When I joined SourcePoint Press, I gave them Day 165, which is the supernatural World War II horror story that I've got. And they said, hey, if you got anything else, we can get it published. Let's talk. The Chronicles of Dr. Death was a short story that was based on Dr. Death versus the Vampire, which was written by Aaron Schutz, who lives in Wisconsin. And one of the artists I was working with at Champion City Comics said, I'm going to turn this short story into a webcomic series. I've got the guy's approval. We're good to go. Take a look at it. It was this black and white crime noir superhero horror story that sort of blends stuff like The Watchmen, Constantine, Hellblazer, and Dexter, if you will. So I said, man, this is really cool. And the artist, Kav, who lives out in California, said, he's given us the green light to do another story. What do you think would be the next step in this sort of story? And I said, oh man, I don't know. We've got a lot of ideas to bounce around because first story is against a vampire, and it's not the typical vampire that has the fangs and sucks the blood. It's more of a vampire that feeds off the pain and suffering of people. They can walk around in daylight among us. They blend into society. But a superhero like Dr. Death can reach out, and he can scan a room, and he can see what your secrets are, what ails you, and he can detect vampires, zombies, and serial killers that walk among us. So he's judge, jury, and executioner because he carries lethal injections and other sort of nasty concoctions with him to just take the bad guys out just like that. So he's trained as a nurse. He understands what he can do with lethal injections. He's got a great scientific mind where he can just use certain types of elements to get himself out of situations. So when we were doing that, which was probably 2011, when we were able to continue the story, Walking Dead was huge, zombie stories were huge. We bounced other monster ideas back and forth, but we said, man, you can't go wrong with a zombie right now. And then throughout comic book and horror fandom, zombies are legit awesome. Yeah. But let's give it a new little twist. Let's kind of take it into sort of like a West African Haiti type element where you have someone that's practicing something similar to voodoo, and they have a skull, and that skull can control the zombie, but the person that has the skull to control the zombie is dead, so the zombie's just in full-on rampage mode. And that second story takes place in Vegas, so it continues from the first story, Dr. Death versus the Vampire. We just wrote the story as it just came to us. It's 116 pages, and I worked with the writer Cobb, and we just started. We didn't plan the story out at all. We just said, let's just go with the story, see where it takes us. It's not how I write stories now, but at the time we're like, we were working so well together, we could just bounce ideas back and forth. You know, the story, we know what we want to do, but with the script, let's just kind of almost do an improv kind of take on it. And that, I know that's not the way a lot of people work on comics together. But if you have a certain type of artist that has a style of working, whether it's not very structured or a little bit more loose or a little bit loose and something really structured and detailed, it's just the person. And it varies from person to person. I have people who want very descriptive pages on what they want in a panel. They do not feel comfortable with having that elbow room to do whatever they want with a script. Other people, I can just say, Joe walks into a bar, and I give him that opportunity to create the bar in their own image. Is it going to be a real sleazy dive bar? Is it going to be something that's a little bit more hoity-toity, if you will? and they go with it. And what I like about the artists that I've worked with is we're on the same page and on some weird comic book psychic level, where I think of the page, I send it off to them with a very vague description. They bring it right back to me the way that I thought it should be. And I think to myself, okay, this is really cool. And I've got to stick with these artists because we're doing something right. And that's what happened with the Chronicles of Dr. Death. Cobb knew what I wanted. I knew what he expected in a script and in a story, and it just worked perfectly. And we completed it as a webcomic. It was out for a while. And when I started working with SourcePoint Press, I told them about it. They said, give it to us. Let's see what we can do. It's a graphic novel. Both stories total about 156, 160 pages. And it's been doing really well at shows, and it really gets the attention of fans who love sort of dark superhero stories that walk a little bit of that fine line between good and evil. Not really your typical world of DC Marvel superheroes, but a little bit more dysfunctional, crazy, horror-based world. And that's what's awesome about that.
All right, yeah, I see classical monsters coming back more and more in comics now. So tell us about Danger Devil. Then we'll talk about your Kickstarter.
Yeah, Danger Devil started off as a webcomic. What's great about working with SourcePoint Press, everything that I've presented to them, whether it's Day 165, Chronicles of Dr. Death, Danger Devil, all started as webcomics. I had an idea for a webcomic that was kind of like a teen comedy, like what you see with like The Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller's Day Off, stuff like that from the 80s. I had a artist I was working with. We thought it was great, but it kind of bombed in a way through the webcomics community, which it was a learning lesson. I tried recruiting other artists for the story, and one guy said, it's not for me, but can I pitch you an idea that I've kind of had in my head? And it was called The Red Devil. And it was a comic book character very similar to the Spirit or Dick Tracy. They kind of had that look, that 30s sort of detective look, but they had that domino mask that they would wear, and they had a sidekick, and they were trying to really get my take on it. And I said, yeah, this sounds cool. It's a little bit pulpy. It's a little bit classic comic book storytelling, but I think the lead character, instead of being a guy, should be a woman. I just thought the name Red Devil at the time didn't really show it as a male character.
Right.
So we developed some character designs. The sidekick, her name was Kid Diablo, which we changed to Kid Diabla. But it worked well at first. It had a different look, different style as far as the characters. It was pulpy, it was campy. It was classic comic book storytelling, but when we decided to turn it into a comic book, we kind of ran into some possible legal issues using a name called The Red Devil, because you don't know if Marvel or DC or maybe another company owns that name. We didn't want to have to deal with any hurdles to get this published. So we changed the main character to Danger Devil, and her job is working for a group called the Mystic Bureau. They're this international secret service organization that protects the world from all supernatural horrors. So their job is to stop demons, ghosts, goblins, any kind of monster that goes bump in the night from taking over the world. So you got a little bit of Buffy with the vampire slaying, you got a little bit of James Bond with this sort of international secret service, and you have Batman because you have these masked crusaders with cool gadgets taking on the bad guys. So if you take the three Bs and put them together, that's Danger Devil. And it's coming out, I believe, first issue hits stores on the 24th of June. But with the way things have been going with Diamond, it tentatively scheduled for June 24th. It was originally supposed to be May, I believe, 27th. But like I said, with everything that's been going on with coronavirus, COVID-19, it's changed the release dates for a lot of independent small press publishers. So we're hoping to see the first issue out by the end of June, maybe beginning of July. And the second issue should be out sometime late July. And then the third issue should be out, we hope, in August. So everything's tentative right now. It's a 3-issue series. It's a complete arc. So if you're into superheroes, slaying, demons trying to take over the world, and you're just looking for classic comic book storytelling, a lot of fun, a lot of action, humor, everything you want in a great comic book series, that's what you're going to get from Danger Devil.
Okay, great. Can they order it straight from SourcePoint or?
Yes. SourcePoint Press does allow you to pre-order all 3 comics. I know Danger Devil 1 should be in soon, so that can get shipped to you. I know stores have ordered Danger Devil number 1. I'm not sure when the orders are coming in for 2 and 3, but we're really excited about it. And we know that, like you said, people love the classic monster stories. They love the superhero stories. You kind of keep those together, and the fans really want to check out the blend of their 2 favorite sort of genres, the sort of horror-based and the superhero worlds. It's a lot of fun.
SourcePoint Press really doesn't do superheroes, do they?
They have some superhero stories. There's Hope. Dirk Manning and Caitlin Smith did that. They have things that are kind of along the lines of like the anti-hero with like David Hayes' The Rot. You can kind of see a lot of like Swamp Thing influence in that. With Casey Pierce with Nora kind of has more of a dark version almost of the X-Men, something like sci-fi,
right?
Almost superhero redemption story. So they don't do the typical superhero stories, but there's been a few that have been coming along that are in that kind of universe, but we kind of do our own take on everything. Like Frank Gogol has No Heroine out now, which kind of is more vampire slaying with like a more of a punk rock style, which is fun. So yeah, we're kind of doing a little bit of superheroes, not all superheroes, but when we do shows, we always talk to fans and they say, I'm a big fan of Marvel, I'm a big fan of DC. And when we talk to them a little bit more, they love superhero stories and they love those titles that come out from both companies, but they're looking for something new. And I thought with Danger Devil, that would be something new to maybe have them take a look at some of our other titles, because they do like supernatural stories, they like sci-fi stories, and by maybe taking that comic to them and saying, hey, this is Danger Devil, but hey, also check out Monstrous by Greg Wright, or check out Ogres by Bob Sally. I mean, you've got all these great comics that have been published by SourcePoint.
Oh yeah, we got a couple of reviews coming. We did Ogres already. We got Rot coming Tuesday, and we did Monstrous. So
yeah, Monstrous is a great story. I mean, that's another thing, because with Danger Devil and Monstrous, you get a title that's for fans of all ages. It's either people who are coming back to comics looking for a great story, or maybe some people just getting into comics and they kind of need that good gateway comic to bigger and better things. And Monstrous can do that. I mean, any SourcePoint Press title can do that, but I also see that with Danger Devil as well, getting in new readers who want something superhero. Not sure what they want, but we can get them like a 3-issue series, which is very easy to take in and digest as a fan.
Oh yeah. So tell us about day 165.
So remember I was telling you about that, like Ferris Bueller Day Off, that sort of 80s. I tried finding another artist for that, and they said, no, that's not my thing. But they wanted to do a war story webcomic, maybe 8 to 10 pages, something just to build their resume and something to build my resume. And that was the part of the reason I did webcomics, was to build a resume to get into print.
Right.
He said, do you want to do a story about the war in Afghanistan? I said, well, let's talk about it. Because this was around the same time doing Chronicles of Dr. Death, 2011, 2012. And he was just saying maybe a day in the life of a soldier, maybe like day 165 of service. I said, well, wait a minute, Day 165 should be the title of the book. But I said, if you give me a minute, let me put some ideas together and bounce it back to you. And I want your input on a war story in Afghanistan that's more like a Twilight Zone episode.
Right.
So that's what Day 165 became, stories of the 165th day of service for soldiers. But on that 165th day of service, they enter a real Twilight Zone type of moment. Supernatural twist, sci-fi kind of element to it. Their world gets turned upside down on that day. And I love the Twilight Zone, love classic war stories. We thought Day 165 would be our best way to get into print comics.
Mm-hmm.
We kept the 10-page story that we originally did for the webcomic, but added a World War II story to it to make it a 36-page comic book, a great one-shot to get into the industry, which is, from what I've learned, a great way for aspiring comic book creators to get into a small press, is having that one-shot comic they can take a chance on. It's not a huge risk. Fans like one-shots. And with Day 165, the World War II story is about a group of British paratroopers who go behind enemy lines following D-Day. And a guy in the platoon is a huge fan of a comic book character named Colonel Joe Monroe, who's a little bit Captain America, a little bit Sergeant Rock, got a little bit of the Punisher in him. And of course, being a British soldier reading American comics, his sergeant really hates that fact that he's not a proper soldier. So as they go behind enemy lines, this platoon gets sucked into this real awesome moment of just pure supernatural horror. It's a one-shot comic. I came up with the story. Frank Allen, who lives in the UK, gave a great voice to all the soldiers and characters in the story, because we turned it in from a USA platoon to a British platoon, because you have that British platoon with an American comic book. Mm. That was the better story. And he knew how to put different takes on people from, maybe you're from London, maybe from Liverpool. Like in the United States, we have all these regional dialects and mannerisms that really make us unique to who we are as Americans. He did the same thing with the British paratroopers, and that's what made Day 165 work. And the artist for Day 165, the World War II story, is Joe Hammerly.
Yeah. We closed the door. Sorry.
That's all right. Who's my cousin, and he's worked on Danger Double with me. Magnus Martin Perez, who lives in South America, was the letterer for that Day 165, and has also worked on Danger Double with me. So it's great to work with the same group of people, because you can work with a group for a long period of time. You just develop a rhythm. You know how to get comic books knocked out, and we just have a great working relationship.
All right, and what's the book you have on Kickstarter right now?
I don't have a book on Kickstarter right now. It's Bob Sally that has the book on Kickstarter right now.
All right. I'm sorry.
Which is no, that's all good. It's Shelter Division.
Okay, well,
and I believe that's 100% funded. I think they're on stretch goals right now, which is awesome.
All right, do you plan on going back and visiting the book Days 165, or is it just done for now?
Yeah. I started it as maybe it's one and done, but when we go to cons, people come back. So if I sell it on a Friday or a Saturday, people come back on the next day and say, "Hey man, you got another book coming out? I just read it. I really liked it." And initially I'll say, no, I didn't really think of doing another story, but I do have a second story set during the Vietnam War. The script is completed, but the story for what I wanted for the Vietnam story went through probably easily 10 different revisions, because every time I wrote the story, I just found something like, no, that's not right. And then I write it again, and I'm like, no, it's not working the way I want. And I wanted to do a Vietnam story with the U.S. platoon, and now I've got it down to where I want it. But right now, in creating comics, you kind of have to put the brakes on some stuff. Mm-hmm. Plus, I got another project I'm working on, so you got to be much, much slower at this point getting stuff out. Just because you don't know when your book can be released. And with Danger Double 1 through 3, I think the whole creative team I work with, we're just ready to take a quick break because we just knocked out 3 issues, probably, let's see, 20, 22, 60, so close to, I don't know, 80, 90 pages in those 3 comics combined. I think that can kind of take a toll with a lot of revisions you're doing and stuff, but I want Day 165, the Vietnam story, to come out. I have a concept for a World War I Day 165 story, so those are in the works, and seeing that Day 165, the World War II story, is almost completely out of print, that's great, knowing that it's sold that well over the years.
All right. Well, thank you. Do you have any plugs that you want to put in? Any shout outs or anything you want to say to the people?
You can get Danger Devil issues 1 through 3 through SourcePoint Press by going through their site. You can go to your local comic book store because we have diamond distribution, so you can order all 3 comics. You can go to SourcePoint Press, take a look at the artwork or the covers for all 3. You can follow me on Instagram, Champion City Comics, same on Twitter under Champion City Comics, or you can just do a search under Tony Doug Wright. You can find me up there. You can see all the artwork. You can take a look at the covers and learn more about what I do in the world of comics. That's the way to go.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Cody.